Please be seated.
Thank you, Drew.
Yes, thank you. Now, Dr. Marsden-Smedley, you're addressing questions in relation to Crown Fire and Crown Scorch.
Okay.
And you have a higher resolution on your computer than is shown in the present screenshot.
That's correct.
Do you see any evidence of Crown Fire on that higher resolution?
I can see some small areas where there is definitely partial Crown Fire.
Yes, and can you direct Mr. Tempone, please, he's sitting at 11 with his cursor at the moment, if you see him, ask him to move until you get into that area.
Please move northwest, which is up and to the right.
Up and to the left.
Left, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and you can see there's a black, area that's more black. If you go down in that area, stop, now go slightly left, left, left. That would be stop there, please. That is a belt of partial Crown Fire.
Right, can we put a hatch around, or a rectangle around that'll satisfy you, Dr. Marsden-Smedley?
Thank you.
It's a little large perhaps for your purpose, is it?
It shows an area on its south-west boundary that on my one is Crown Scorch only.
So it's just a little bit narrower than
that's right.
Shown there.
Yes.
Can we make it a bit narrower, please, Mr.
I think you can see what the doctor's referring to, Mr. Tempone. So
yes.
Just do it and we'll ask him if he's happy with it.
And now swing up, yes. And now back along the top, yes. And then back to the start.
Yep. That's
Thank
better.
you.
Thank you. And is that the only area of partial Crown Fire that you can see?
There is also another area just below the 11 star.
Yes.
If you go down, 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 stop, and then swing left, and then up a bit. No, not quite. Now it's going a little bit left, and now go down and left. Go left. There, that's the boundary. And then you come back, yes, and now come across to, yes, keep going across. Geez, there's a partial bit there that's only Scorch, I think. It goes into a very narrow belt of Crown, just to the right. That area through just to the right is a very narrow line of Crown Fire, and then it comes back into a partial Crown Fire to the right, just going around there, yes.
Right now.
No, back to where you were. Now go very slightly right and then up. It's basically that almost a dumbbell shaped patch.
Right, can we make an attempt at drawing it, please, Mr. Tempone, and we'll see if it's acceptable.
And then up a little bit and then back, across, and now a little bit more across to the left, a little bit, and now down, that's it, and then a narrow line through, narrow line, and a little bit left, left, and now start to come back up, and you can keep coming up, 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 keep going up, 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 now go left, and then across and down to the start. Yes.
You content with that,
Yes.
Doctor?
As a rough map, yes.
Thank you. And that's the extent of the Crown Fires that you can see, or partial Crown Fires rather, that you can see in that map.
Yes.
Thank you. I attend to that.
Thank you.
Now, within that, within your high resolution, you see areas of crown scorch.
Yes.
And are they within the hatched area marked 2?
I'll just go back to that point.
Sorry, do they include within the hatched area marked 2?
Yes, there is crown scorch within the area marked 2.
Thank you. Do you accept that crown scorch is likely to be 10 to 14 times flame height?
I would need to check the exact figures from my 2009 report, but that is my recollection, and because the fuels were dry, it is towards the higher end of the range.
Right, can we go to Doc 114 0741, please?
Good.
That's the paper to which you referred?
It was, yes. Thank
you. And 0741. And you'll see you don't need to move that because I think that's the paragraph the doctor's after.
Yes?
So towards the 14 times.
Yes.
Thank you. And what is your expectation of the height of the trees in the hatched area 2?
When I did my site visit, I looked at the trees on the western end of that area 2, and my memory is the trees varied between in the area I looked at, between about 12 and 15 metres, increasing to around 20 in the gully, I believe.
Thank you. Can we go back to that screenshot, please? And you say when you did your site visit, that's the visit of September, I think it was, 2020.
That's right.
Thank you. Now, you didn't go into that hatched area 2 in April of 2013, did you?
Not into the area 2, no.
And you didn't go into any of the areas shown in that screenshot in April of 2013, did you?
I did a quick walk off Inala Road. I was very circumspect about what I was doing because I'd already been bailed up by one local resident because of sensitivities in the area, even though I had a letter from the head of the fire service explaining what I was doing. I just had a quick walk across to look at what the fire had done, but I didn't go close to the ignition point because of sensitivities, and also because it wasn't part of my investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But just in terms of where you went, you came off the end of Inala Road, did you towards the 8 and the 11 in that area? Is that what you're describing?
No, I would have been a bit to the left of the 11, I believe.
Right.
Unfortunately, I had left my GPS in the car, which was an oversight on my part, so I don't have a track of where I went.
Right. And you left your notes in the car as
That's
well
right.
because you didn't take
Yes.
any notes?
That's right.
And you left your camera in the car as well because you didn't take any photos?
I knew I was on private property.
Oh, I'm not being
was...
critical of Dr. Marsden Smedley. That's the fact, though. Yes. Can we, Mr. Tempone, can we just get a green marker, please, a little to the left of, go to a spot to the left of the 11. Just go up and to the left a little bit, please. Is that about where you went to?
I think I would have been a bit to the left of that.
A little bit to the left?
Left, maybe down a small amount, probably in that general area.
Yes, thank you.
And possibly a bit to the below that as well, because I came in from the south.
Yes, can we put a circle around just in that general area? That circle depicts about the area that you got to.
Or to the south of that. Again, because I didn't have my GPS and it was a very quick
Yeah.
looking to whether the conditions were comparable
Right.
to what I'd seen elsewhere.
And it follows that you didn't do any assessment of fire intensity in that area?
No, all I was checking was what was the general fire spread direction
Yes.
and was it consistent with what I had elsewhere.
Right. Now, is it correct that the next time you went to the area shown in this screenshot was your site visit?
Yes.
Thank you. Does it follow from your answer as to canopy scorch and partial crown fire in hatched area 2 that the height of the flame in hatched area 2 would be no more than 1 to 2 metres? So we take up towards 14, we think the maximum tree height's 20 metres. It's not going to be more than 1 to 2 metres.
It certainly wouldn't have been when it's at the left-hand end, but it would have been increasing as it gets to the line shown for area 2.
Right. And you said in an answer before we broke that that hatched area shows the fire front. What did you mean to convey by that answer?
That's where there would have been a more or less continuous line of burning fire moving across the landscape.
When
At 3 p.m. At 3 p.m.
Yes.
Yes. And when you say moving across, it's moving from the larger, well, from the front of the, from the right of the hatched area towards that rectangle that's now been drawn.
Yes, it would have been moving in a east to east-southeast direction.
Right. And it'd be the wind that would be pushing it in that direction.
That's right.
Thank you. We've tended that, so we can move on. Now, in your most recent report, you've used the work by Noble, published in the Australian Journal of Ecology, to calculate the opinions that you've given.
What I've used is the MacArthur Eucalypt forest fire, the submodel in that for spot fire generation, where the equations for translating MacArthur's model into a form that I can use in a spreadsheet was done by Noble, Barry and Gill in 1980. Yes.
And what fuel weight did you use?
My memory is 10 tonnes per hectare, but I would need to check that on my spreadsheet.
Right. Or would you check that, please?
.9 tonnes per hectare. That figure was generated by the fuel load model that I generated with my co-worker Wendy Anderson, and came from the work done in the 2011 assessment of fuel load and fuel hazard in Tasmania, and has recently been submitted for publication in the International Journal of Wildland Fire.
It didn't come from observations made in the hatched area 2, did it?
No, it was predicted.
Thank you. And your rate of forward spread of fire that you used was what?
At which time, please?
Well, to reach your predictions about spotting.
Well, I used equation 10 in the Project Vesta model,
Yes.
the rate of fire spread predicted by that model.
Yes, which was what?
It varies between a rate of spread of... I've got to just change something here because it's... this is a... I've got to... At 3 o'clock, it is predicting it to be about 46 metres a minute. The reason why I've got to check it is that there's a fire build-up time which I need to compensate for earlier times.
Yes.
But I believe by around 3 o'clock, 1500, the fire was developed enough to be using the straight prediction.
Well, in your report, you have, in your earlier reports, it's been the opinion expressed by you, has it not, that the rate of forward spread at 3 p.m. was 30 metres a minute.
I believe that was what was in the 2014 report.
Yes, yes. So it would be appropriate to use that rate of forward spread, wouldn't it?
Yes, I could put that in very easily.
Thank you. Now, you're putting it into something, and let's take the mystery out of this. S being the spotting distance.
Yes.
Equals R, which is the rate of forward spread.
Yes.
We're putting 30 in there.
Yes.
Multiplied by brackets 4.17
Yes.
minus 0.033
Yes.
times W,
Yes.
which is 12.9,
Yes.
in brackets
Yes.
minus 0.36.
That's right.
Right. So that's the formula. And what do the predicted weight and the 30 metres a minute forward spread give you? You need, sorry, before we do that, R is expressed in kilometres an hour.
And my formula that I'm using here adjusts that to metres a minute.
Right. So if we use the formula that I've postulated, you'd be using for R 1.8.
Yes.
Thank you. In any event, you can use your changed formula and tell us what the result is.
6.4 kilometres.
Thank you. Now, in answer to Mr. Armstrong last week, you said at page 414, this was the question, and Doctor, can you explain to His Honour roughly how big a bushfire would need to become before it starts to produce the effects that you've described? And I'm going to read your answer, but once I've read it to you, I'd like you to wait for the question, please. This is an area of current research which has not yet been finalised. And you are aware, aren't you, of work by Story et al. In relation to the drivers of long-distance spotting during wildfires in southeastern Australia?
Could you please give me the complete reference?
Yes. International Journal of Wildland Fire 2020, 29/459. If Mr. Tempone could please get up document, you probably get there quicker than I can. It's there, it's that one, yes. Doc 121. Do you see that on the screen?
Yes.
That's the article to which I'm referring. You're aware of that, are you not?
I have seen that paper, yes.
Have you read it?
I would have read it. I can't remember straight in front of me the fine detail in it.
Right. Well, was it that paper that you were referring to as the area of current research which has not yet been finalised?
No.
What were you referring to?
I was referring to the work being done by, his name's, it's by CSIRO in Canberra using a vertical wind tunnel and I believe the lead author is Ellis, I think, but I'm not sure on that. I could find out very easily.
Right. Well, in any event, if we can pay attention to this, if it could be enlarged a bit, please. Now, the thesis of this paper, Doctor, is that source fire area is the exact words, is the strongest predictor of long-distance spotting. Do you accept that? First, that's the thesis of the paper.
I accept that with the way they have analysed their data and the information that they would have had for doing their analysis, they say they've mainly used line scans, and the line scan would be producing a measure like that they could easily analyse that would give them that as an input.
Right. Do you agree that source fire area is the strongest predictor of long-distance spotting?
Not necessarily, no.
Well, why not?
Because a better measure, in my opinion, but much harder to model on the large scale for the information that they would have had available to them, would be the actual intensity of the fire line rather than the total area burning.
Now, intensity in parts related to flame height?
Yes.
Thank you. What else is it related to?
It's most closely related to the energy release of the fire, which is related to the rate of fire spread and the amount of fuel burning, with a minor variation coming in from the energy content in the fuel.
Do you agree that there are three sequential stages of spotting? First of all, firebrand generation. Secondly, firebrand transport. Third, ignition of fires upon land.
That's reasonable, yes.
Thank you. Now, in terms of firebrand generation, if the last screenshot could come back, please. Now, you postulate in your opinion that a firebrand was responsible, most probably responsible for fires further to the east of what's shown in that screenshot.
I presume you're referring to the points 3A and 3B
Yes.
in my fifth report.
Yes.
And the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you. Now, it's in relation to that. You understand that those fires started before 3 p.m. on the evidence?
About 3 p.m. or
Yes.
just before,
Yes.
but perhaps not more than a few minutes before.
Right, thank you. So it follows, doesn't it, that the firebrand must have been generated within the hatched area too?
Towards the eastern boundary of that area?
Right.
Yes.
So where do you postulate the firebrand came from? Can you take the operator, please, to the point?
Yes. I would say halfway between where it has 2 and the easternmost boundary is the most probable region when the fire was burning that area.
Right, so if we can come to somewhere between the 2 and the edge of the hatched area, please, about halfway. No, way across to the left. Keep going,
Left.
within the hatched area.
Yep, now
Between
go
about there.
Slightly left, slightly, and then go between the north and the southern end of that
You want
fire.
a line up and down there, you want?
Yes.
Right, if you draw a line up and down from there. Thank you. Can we just have a look at the screen at the line? Is that a bit long for you, Doctor? Or
Well, looking
right
at the
position?
higher resolution image of the same that on my laptop,
Yes.
I can see that in the northern half of that line, the fire has done a lot of scorching. It would have been very close to a crown fire in that zone. So yes, there, going up, and now go right across to where the boundary is, and then follow that arc back. Yes, down, 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 down. Stop, now come back to the start. Is an area where the fire was burning very, very close to a crown fire. It's a full scorch, and if I can show it on the higher resolution image if people are interested.
Thank you. Now, do you accept that for firebrand transport, surface and upper level winds both play a part?
Surface winds for the short range, but in the medium to longer, yes, the mid and upper level winds would be very important.
Right. Now, you don't have any wind data accepting that at Hobart Airport and Mount Coonya. Is that correct?
Hobart Airport, Shroud Point at Dunalley, and Campania are the ones that I would use for this fire.
Right. And at just before 3 o'clock, that shows wind blowing from the northwest.
It shows wind blowing from the west or just north of west between 271 and 285 degrees.
Thank you. And the shape of this burn, the shape of this burn indicates a fire consistent with that?
Yes.
So one would expect if a firebrand was generated from that position, it would travel in a it would travel towards the southeast.
No, it'll travel towards the east primarily. Maybe very, very slightly towards the southeast, or east-southeast, but mostly east.
Thank you. Now, what about surface winds? Have you taken them into account at all, in your opinion?
No, I have made the assumption that the atmosphere was fully coupled and well mixed, and so it would have been, the synoptic wind would have been the driver, and that Hobart Airport would have been a representative direction for that.
So you're aware, aren't you, that Mr. Hall describes the wind as southwesterly at 50 kilometres an hour. You've discounted that in your opinion, have you?
I would have to look at Mr. Hall's evidence again, but the fire spread footprint is consistent with a westerly or very, very slightly north of westerly wind. It's not, and the smoke seen streaming on the Mount Coonya radar says the same.
It's not consistent with a southwesterly wind?
No, it is not.
No, thank you. So yes, thank you. Now, ignition of fuels upon landing is the third sequential stage. First of all, the firebrand still needs to be smouldering or flaming.
Yes.
And it needs to land in sufficiently dry combustible fuel to ignite a spot fire.
And with fuel with a high enough continuity so that when it lights the fuel, it can then spread.
How long does that process take?
Very highly variable. It can be quite quick, as in 2 to 5 minutes, or it can actually be half an hour or more, and the drier and the windier the conditions, the quicker that will be.
I want to come back to this concept of source fire area. If we can go back to the article by Story. Thank you. And if we can go to 466. No, just... page 466 of this article. Yes, thank you. And scroll down to the bottom. If we just go back, please, to the previous page. You'll stop there, please, Mr. Tempone. You'll see that paragraph right at the bottom right-hand corner, predicted maximum spot fire distance derived from the model increased strongly with source fire area, particularly in densely forested areas with steep slopes and high wind exposures. In these areas, maximum spot fire distances of 4 kilometres are predicted under strong winds and with a source fire of approximately 1,000 hectares, increasing to 8 kilometres for 5,000 source fire. Is that consistent with your research in the area?
I have observed significant spotting on much smaller fires than that, certainly in the area of 100 hectares to 250 hectares, giving spot distances of that range, i.e. not necessarily as big as 1,000 to 5,000 hectares. Right,
and if we go over the page, you'll see that the authors speak about outliers. And if we can scroll down, please, under fire, and we need to go to the next page, I think. Yes, under discussion. Keep going. Fire area, keep going to the bottom. Thank you very much. You'll see mid that paragraph, there were several examples of smaller source fires producing long distance spot fires, 2 source fires of about 500 hectares spotted longer than 2 kilometres, and 6 source fires between 50 and 100 hectares produced at least 3 spot fires.
Yes, and you also need to remember that this is a paper covering the whole of southeastern Australia, and Tasmanian fuels are significantly different on average to mainland fuels in that we tend to have denser, higher continuity, so that we have higher levels of fuel hazard at comparable times since fire. So you've got to remember that Tasmanian fuel hazards tend to be higher than the mainland.
I attend to that article, Your Honour. Thank you. I want to move to a different subject, if I might, Doctor. We established earlier that your original contract was not to do with... You're right, Doctor?
Yep.
Thank you. I've got to get your concentration.
I was listening.
Oh, you're listening. Excellent. Your original contract was not to do with cause.
That's right.
And you made an assumption in your report to the Tasmanian government that the fire started in the vicinity of 242.
I accepted that as ignition point, yes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. And then you say in your report of the 6th of March 2020 that your assessment of the fire spread is consistent with the TFS investigation of the fire's origin. Right. That's in a macro sense rather than a micro sense, because you hadn't been to the property to have a look at the precise point of origin.
At that stage, yes.
Thank you. Now, you then say in your report of December 2020, if we get up CB 13, please. And if we could go to 0132. And I want to draw your attention to 4.1.23. Thank you, Mr. Tempone. The results of your site visit and assessment of the available information. Now, what is the available information that you refer to there?
What I'm referring to there is my assessment of the information I was able to determine from looking at the trees charring and looking at spread direction that I was able to get in the field on my site visit, and I also looked at the photographs in the fire investigation report, and I reviewed the witness statements in the fire investigation report and other places, and the assessment done by the fire investigators to come to that opinion.
There's only one little couple of words that escaped from you there. I looked at the information in the fire investigation report and other places. What did you mean by that?
The witness statements?
Yes, in the fire investigation report.
Yes.
Yes.
And I looked at the...
In other words, was there anything outside the fire investigation report other than your observations?
From my site visit? And there is also the map generated by the fire service at 17:35, which is consistent with fire coming from that location.
In a macro sense?
Well, in a sense, not this. I don't know what you mean by macro.
Well, that location was an area of commencement of fire rather than telling you a particular point.
It was, that shows that, yes, within a fairly small area, yes.
Thank you. Now, in your report of the 25th of April 2021, you say this, there's no need to get it up, Doctor, that even if a small campfire had been lit in the stump's bowl on the 28th of December, it's extremely likely the stump would have been ignited. That would depend upon the constitution of the stump bowl, would it not?
It would be determined by whether there was actual wood in the bottom of the bowl and the moisture in that wood. Yes. And
indeed, that's consistent with Kirk's work about this that was repeated in document 240037. If we could bring that up, please. And if we run down to, keep going down please, to sleepers. Sleepers which are old trees or stumps containing much rotted wood internally in which mouldering fire has previously been induced. Because of their unique burning characteristics, fire may persist in them for long periods, documented in some instances to be as much as 9 months. So when you refer to, depending upon the wood in it, that's consistent with what Kirk says about containing much rotted wood internally.
I wouldn't agree necessarily with the rotted wood, in that site is very dry, and so rot would be very slow, and so you could have wood that's actually quite structural in there. And as for the burning period, log heaps certainly for that extended period, but a stump would tend to burn out in considerably shorter periods. An individual stump, that is.
Thank you. Now, we can go back, please, to document CV Court Book 13. And if we can go to 4.2.18 on 0138. Right, so you've provided us with a summary. The only potential ignition location that fits all the available information. What did you mean there by all the available information? There's no need to repeat it if it's the same answer to the one that I got from you about the earlier paragraph in this report.
Yes, it's the same information. It's the observations I made on my site visit, and it's my assessment of the fire investigation report, and it's the mapping provided to me by the fire service.
Right.
Yes.
Well, now, I want to suggest to you that what you say at 4.2.18, that the only potential location is or at a location identified in the fire investigation report does not fit certain matters. If document 101, photo 9 could come up, please. Now, you'll see, just ask you to accept that the TFS were particularly interested in the area between marker 20 and the rock to its left. You'll see in the top right of that photograph two, or at least one to the left, unburnt stem of grass that would indicate fire coming from the left to the right of the photograph. You accept that?
At that stage of a fire, in its very, very early phases, I would not be able to make, with the information I can see in that photograph, a fire spread direction with that much confidence.
Indeed, looking at that photograph, you would not see how anyone could say that that was the point of origin of a fire, would you?
The person on the ground at the time investigating it would have been able to see much more easily the small micro indicators, like the...
Can you address my question?
I think he is, Mr. Rood.
Sorry?
What I'm saying is that from what I can see in that photograph on a flat screen, I cannot tell you confidently exactly how the fire spread, other than the fact that there is evidence there of a burning root in the ground. But the people on the ground would have been able to look at that and be able to see, for example, if you look at the rock just up and left of the 20 cone, there's a rock which is black on that one there, yes? That rock is black on its lowest one, the side towards the bottom of the screen, and suggesting that the fire has gone up the screen. But you need to be on the ground to make those assessments properly at the time.
So to repeat the question to you, Doctor, looking at that photograph, you could not identify that as the point of origin of a fire, could you?
That question must be that Dr. Marsden Smedley couldn't.
Yes.
Not that no one could.
No, Dr. Marsden Smedley.
I could identify that as a spot where a fire has been burning in a root or similar on the ground by the area of ash with the rock in the middle of it. It would certainly be an area that, if I was doing a fire investigation, I would look at very, very carefully.
Now, you gave evidence in an answer a moment ago that this shows burning, a burning area. It doesn't at all. It shows an area that's been burnt.
You are quite right. It shows an area where a fire has burnt across, yes.
Yes. And you can't tell in which way.
I can get a couple of minor indicators, but no, not with confidence.
Thank you. You accept that the unburnt sticks, grass and leaves at this site all indicate a fire coming from left to right in the photograph?
No. On the balance of probabilities, and again emphasising the fact that I have not seen this on the ground at the time, I would suggest that it was more likely the fire had gone towards the top of the screen, looking at the unburnt grass in the bottom right corner and the small amount of grass on the near the bottom left side.
Yep. Could photograph 6 please be shown in this set? Now, do you accept that the burnt tussock shows fire moving from the bottom left of the photograph towards marker 20?
Again, not having seen it in detail on the ground, but on the balance of probability, it is more likely it's gone from the 20 towards, at a diagonal across, towards the clump, and then has ignited the clump, and then burnt more intensely through the clump as it consumed that clump. So in other words, a very, very low trickling fire has reached the clump, and then as it burnt into the clump has picked up intensity in the clump, so it's burnt more completely towards the bottom left-hand side of that clump.
It's equally consistent, is it not, Dr. Marsden-Smedley, that the fire burnt from the bottom left of the photograph towards that tussock?
No. I have to be careful what I say on that because I didn't see it at the actual time, but if I was going to use that as a likelihood, I would say it's more likely gone from the 20 across the tussock and kept going in that direction.
Photograph 10, please be shown. See another tussock. If we can zoom in on that, please. You accept that that shows fire moving from the right to the left of the photograph?
No, it is more likely to be showing fire coming from the bottom left towards the top right. Now, I think I covered this in my report that in the very, very early phases of a fire, though, the fire tends to switch around a bit. So depending on how strong and consistent the wind is, you can get variation. That's why it's really important to be doing, when you're looking at things like tussocks, to do it immediately after the fire occurred.
Doctor, if there was information, it's the word you use, available, that the fire was moving from the pink line shown in that photograph across the green arrow, but with the head of the arrow at the other end, in other words, in the other direction, if that information were available, that would change your view, would it not, of the point of origin of this fire? If there was, yes, fire spread information collected at the time that showed the fire had come across from the, say, the top right towards the bottom left. Thank you. Now, could we please get CB 150 back up?
Well, is that a good time to break, Mr. Rood?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll adjourn till 2:15.
All stand please. This honourable court now stands adjourned until 2:15 p.m.